All right, good morning. We're going to let everybody get settled in here. Starting to populate. Should have a pretty good turnout. It's a nice Saturday morning here.
So we had roosters in the background while we were waiting to get in, and maybe they're not going to welcome you now.
They just heard that we were rolling and they were live and they got quiet. So we'll see. Well,
there's one faintly.
All right. Welcome to those attendees showing up, just getting let in. We're going to give it a few minutes for everybody to get settled. Welcome to this week's EnviroHouse webinar. It is going to be about raising chickens and ducks. I'm curious about the ducks myself. We have our good friend Jenny Call here with us from GardenSphere and Janda from the EnviroHouse. So we're going to let everybody get settled. There's only a few showing up, so we're waiting for a few more spots to jump in here. I think it just takes a moment. I was having a difficulty signing in on my own too, so we'll give a couple people. While we're waiting though, we can say that we had a very successful webinar last week with the Recycle Reset with our host, our guest host, Preston. Thank you for doing that. And Janda, while we have the moment, why don't you mention some of the upcoming ones we're working on here?
Okay, we have coming up next week, we'll be composting. We did that last year and we had some issues with sound. We are hoping we have that corrected now. So we'll be doing composting on the 20th. On the 27th, we will be doing heat pumps, heating and cooling, getting ready for the air conditioning season coming up. And then in April, we are going to have a jam-packed schedule because our sustainability office is promoting the whole month as Earth Month instead of just doing Earth Day. So instead of having one webinar a week, we'll probably have 2, maybe 3, and then there will be a lot of other activities that we'll be doing in conjunction with the sustainability office. So the themes for that, but there's a different theme for each week. Jenny will be starting that off with one on gardening. So just watch for that announcement. If you're in Tacoma, that will be in the Enviro Talk that will be coming out soon. So.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm going to also cross promote a little Ask the Enviro Challengers. We just had a new episode about backyard farming and sustainability and food insecurity and food security. So something this webinar today will address a lot of those cool issues about raising chickens from a real expert. So those of you who have finally joined us here, thank you for signing in on this Saturday morning. Some things you're going to need to know about. If you like to communicate with us, we can do it through the chat. So if you'll open your chat window, or if you have a question specifically, we'll do it in the question and answer box also. If you would, on your chat window, there's a little drop down that says all panelists. Drop down and make that all panelists and attendees. That way everyone can see your questions. This is a great place to interact since your cameras are off and your microphones are muted. Excuse me. You can talk here. So chat here, and I'll be moderating so you can ask questions, and I'll try to answer them as we go, or I'll save them for when it's a good break in the discussion so that we don't interrupt and ask the question at the wrong time, or I don't. So there's also going to be polls, as you may know if you've done this before. If not, this is what a poll is going to look like, and I encourage everyone to vote. So here's what the poll will come up with. We'll check it. How did you hear about this webinar? Was it a Facebook event, EnviroNews email, workplace email, friend, colleague, or other? You can put that in the chat. We want to make sure we're hitting all the right places that are getting people to come to our webinars. So thank you for that. I'll give you a few more seconds to vote. We got about 70% voted. Nice job. And then once you get that vote, everyone gets a chance to vote. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling now, and then I can share the results. We'll be able to see and discuss a little. Looks like EnviroNews was the big winner this week. That's fantastic. So looks like we need to send out more workplace emails to everywhere where you work. Just kidding. So then I'll throw that off the window, and then we'll have more questions throughout the discussion, throughout Jenny's presentation. So we'll have moments to pause and talk and give her questions like that. That's all I have. Janda, do you want to do anything else, or can I just send it off to Jenny?
Well, let's introduce Jenny briefly. Jenny Call is a farm girl from Fife and has an ag degree in her background. She'll tell you a little more about herself. She's been working with, she's doing presentations for GardenSphere the last couple of years, but she worked at the store and occasionally still does to help out. She's also an elementary school teacher, so she's a busy girl, and this is her little Midland area farm that she's presenting from in the background there. And maybe we'll get lucky and the rooster will welcome you too.
All right.
Plural.
Well, thank you, Jen. Why don't you, thank you, Jen. Why don't you take it away from us, Jenny? We'll see you in a
All
few.
right. Yeah, well, welcome everybody. It's so exciting to have you here today for the urban fowl. Focus a lot on chickens, but get into ducks as well, because ducks, they have a special place in my heart with ducks. I am from Pierce County. I grew up in Fife, and when Fife was all fields and farms. So I grew up running through cabbage fields and dill fields, and I have a sustainable agriculture degree. I am an elementary school fine arts instructor, and I have my own farm as well. I run a small CSA, and I also, if I have any extras, I always make sure to donate those to local food banks. So please, any question you have, there are no wrong questions, there are no bad questions. Questions are amazing. And if you have any tips, maybe you've been doing this before and this is just kind of a refresher, and you heard that something works, share it. Actually, everything is welcome. I really encourage participation. So I'm going to go ahead and start my slides. And behind me is one of our greenhouses, and we're doing some hydroponics in there right now. So that's what you see behind me in our woods. You will probably hear roosters. I have 4 roosters, but I'm in the county, so I can have roosters. And they're just lovely, lovely creatures. You might hear ducks as well. I'm actually in the duck area for the presentation. So you might hear ducks sharing their duck opinions today. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you and get started. And here we go. And we are just starting out. So this will be all very easy to follow. It's the very beginning of raising chickens, and I'll be throwing in ducks in there as well. We're gonna start out with a question, actually. Okay, so here's our first question.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Why do you want chickens? That's the question, right? Okay, everyone's getting vote. Let's see. For eggs, pets, meat, or other, please do answer in the chat. I asked everybody where they are right now. We have someone from Kent, North End, and Tacoma West Slope. So get a little bit of variety. I'm out here on the island of Vashon, so just want to share that so we can see where we're getting our viewers from. Anyone from the farthest away, you could win a free T-shirt that I'm not going to make or give you. No, kidding. If I could give out T-shirts, it'd be great. So, all right, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to answer. And then, all right, here we go to end the polling. There's a question, UP, someone's in University Place. Will this webinar be recorded and made available? We are recording right now, and we will make sure this is available, and we'll let you know in an email, follow-up email, when it is available for you to view. All right, I'm gonna end the polling. Let's take a look at those results. Dun, dun, dun.
For eggs.
Now, Jenny, is that why you got into chickens?
I did, because we ate a lot of eggs. I would be curious to find out about the other. Is it for 4-H or for showing? What is that other?
I don't have any answers in the chat yet, but I will definitely, if you answered other, please tell us why. We're interested.
Yes, I'm very curious. And I saw there was a little bit of meat in there, and for fun too. So let's see if I can get it. Hold on, it's just a second here. Where'd it go?
Oh, here we go. The answer that someone put is to upcycle kitchen waste was the reason for the other.
Interesting. Okay, so we will cover that a little bit too. So that's excellent to know. So when we are starting out with chickens, we start with chicks. And so that is from hatch to 9 weeks. And there's a lot that you kind of need to consider. Chicks need to start out, especially in that first week, at about 90 degrees at the floor level. And at each week, what you'll do is you'll raise that heat lamp a little bit to continue decreasing that temperature. So it'll change about 5-10 degrees. But what you really want to look at though, yes, there's a temperature to consider, but you also want to look at your chicks, right? So if the light is hanging and the chicks are keeping out from under that light, it's too warm. So you're going to want to raise it up. And what you want to look for are chicks that are very active, moving around the entire space. That means that they're really, really comfortable, very comfortable in their space. And if they're huddled up under the light, they're just too cold and you're going to want to lower it down. You are going to need starter feed. Now there's tons and tons of different types of starter feed. I use certified organic feed, but there's all types. At GardenSphere, we've got certified organic, and we also have local. The Excel feed is a locally sourced feed here in Tacoma. So there's Modesto, there's Scratch and Peck. If you go to feed stores, you're going to find that there's Purina. So there's all different types, but it doesn't matter what it is. You just need to use starter feed. That is going to be the key because it's very high in protein, low in calcium, and that's what they need. They need that high protein to develop properly. So once they have some neck feathers, and they're gonna look weird. They have neck feathers, and they have all their feathers are grown out. Then they are considered a pullet. So at that point, so from hatch to 9 weeks, these are the temperature and that starter feed are what you're going to need to consider.
Now, is that a heat lamp? I was just going to ask. It says 90 degrees, so there's a special heat bulb. You're on it.
Yeah, and you need that heat lamp, and make sure to get it with a hood. If you have reptiles, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You get that heat lamp with the hood and you're ready to go. If you have done this before, you might want to consider having a heat pad underneath. But for starter folks, go for that heat lamp in that hood. Again, you're going to need a feeder. You can get the metal type, which then you use a mason jar and you screw it on, or plastic. Now, I know we're really working to try to keep away from plastic, but as chicks, they are messy. And so the one that is displayed here in the picture is the metal with the mason jar, okay? But the plastic ones, you can take apart all of the pieces so you can clean them thoroughly. And that's gonna be super important. You wanna make sure everything is really cleaned out. The feeder, you're probably gonna have to clean it out every day until they're, a little bit older. The waterer, several times a day, you're gonna have to clean that out. So going for something that's very easy to clean. The metal waterers are really easy to clean, but the metal feeders are just, if you're busy, it's going to be a lot of work. So go for those for the plastic ones, and they're small, and they use the pint size jars or the pint plastic receptacles as well. So, and you've got those all, and those can be purchased at GardenSphere, at feed stores like Wilco, all very reasonably priced. It's very, very low process and cost. Newspaper. Now, when they're young like this, I use newspaper. I do not use shavings because then the shavings get into everything, especially their water, and then you're going to clean it out more. So I use newspaper for the first probably 2 to 3 weeks, and because you can find newspaper pretty easily, then you can just tear it up, put it in that compost bin, right? So you can compost it out. And so newspaper is super easy to clean up. You're going to have to probably do that 2 or 3 times a day for the first week or two. And then once a day after about the second week, because they just kind of get more manageable at that point. You're going to have a brooder box of some sort. So if you're just getting 2 or 3 chicks, a very large Rubbermaid tub, and then some netting on top to protect them, or something to keep it covered. You don't want to use the lid to cover it, but you do want to have some kind of protection. Works beautifully. If you have an old hamster cage, I've used those for my chicks, and I can fit probably 4 in there for the first 2 weeks. And that is fantastic because then they can see you, they can interact with you, and that imprint starts. But you're going to need some kind of receptacle that they are going to be able to grow into and has a nice cover and figure out how to attach that heat lamp and be able to raise it up and down. People are very creative, so whatever works for you, make it easy for you, okay? Otherwise it'll get very, very frustrating. So keep it really easy. You're gonna wanna place them in an area where they're gonna be able to see you and interact with you on a daily basis, so they can imprint. And that's super important if you're looking for a pet, right? If you want them to be friendly and interactive with you when they're older, you absolutely want them to be able to see you a lot of the time, and they need to be handled quite a lot. Starter feed, they generally come in 25-pound bags. You will go through it depending on how many chicks you have. 2 chicks, that 25-pound bag will last you about 2 weeks, okay? So figure 4, gonna last you about a week and a half. 6, it'll last you a week. Okay, so if you're gonna get more than 4, I would recommend getting the 50-pound bag if you can of starter feed. And I think now 9 to 18 weeks, we've got pullets. They look like ratty teenagers at this point. They look just atrocious. They look like they don't quite know what to do with their feathers. The fluff is starting to go away. They have their true color is starting to show. They look ridiculous. And at this point, I really love taking a lot of pictures of them because they really do. They just look super funny. They're under a year. Okay, pullets, any chickens under a year, they are pullets. You're gonna wanna think about at the 8-week mark, they should be fully feathered at that point, which means they are protected from the weather. When they're not fully feathered, up until about the 7 to 8 week mark, they still have a little bit of that fluff. If we get good wind, rain, or whatever, they're not as protected, and then they can get pneumonia, they can get other things happening with them, and their immune system isn't quite ready to handle all that. So, 7, 8 week mark, 8 weeks, I like to wait till about 8 weeks. When they're fully feathered, then they can go out in the run. So if you get chicks and you still haven't got your coop, you got about 8 weeks to build that coop, lots of time to kind of really figure that out before they go outside, okay? In the summertime, if you're in like July, August, they could go out at about 6 weeks because the air temperature tends to be quite warm. And they're doing pretty good. They just need a cover if we have a little summer rain, right? So you're going to, at about 8 weeks, 9 weeks-ish, you can continue that starter feed if you have a bunch of it, right? Continue that starter feed until you run out. Okay, then you're going to want to switch over to a grower feed. The protein stays quite high, okay, but then now it helps them kind of fill out a little bit. Now, this is for the person who is going for those meat birds. Okay, you're going to end up processing your own chickens. That's a wonderful thing to do. You know what they've eaten. They're coming from your property. It's a very, you can do it quite compassionately. And so you are going to stick with your grower feed until you process your chickens. Okay, so the folks who are doing it for meat, you are going to, once that starter feed is gone, 9 weeks, start that grower feed, and you are going to be using that grower feed until you process. Okay, and different chickens, different types of chickens have different processing times. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure you're feeding that until you're going to process. If you are using them for eggs, okay, at 18 weeks, you're going to want to switch over to a layer feed, or you can wait till they lay that first egg and then do layer feed if you have a bunch of grower. But what I like to do is you use the grower until about 18 weeks, let it run out, and then start that layer even if they haven't laid that first egg, because what you're doing is you're helping them build up that calcium level, and then that first egg is going to be less malformed because they have had that calcium running through their.
Real quick question about the feed. Now you say let it run out. Now with dogs, when you change their food, you integrate at the end there. Is that necessary with chickens? Like
Yeah, it really isn't. It really
Okay,
isn't.
good.
I mean, if you want to, you can, but you have to really mix it up pretty good. I just let it run out. It doesn't affect them at all. They're just happy to get food. And if you're using scratch and peck, oh my goodness, there's so many whole grains, and then they like start getting into more whole grains, they go bananas. So you really don't have that like you would with a cat or a dog, where you have to kind of mix it in. I just let it run out, and then I always have a bag of whatever I need to build up to ready, so that when it does run out, I just start in, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's a great question. That's a really good question. The first egg. So we are starting to get into 19 weeks here. They should have laid their first egg by now. And so you're going to switch over to that layer feed. Now, different varieties of chickens will lay for different lengths of time. Typically 4 to 5 years is when they're in their height of production. Okay, so your layer is going to be laying pretty consistently for about 4 or 5 years, and then they're going to stop. They don't ever stop completely, but their production will drop. So you're going to see less and less eggs over the years. I have had chickens for their entire life. So I just keep them. They are a pet. They have a name. The oldest chicken we've had went to 10 years, and she really did pass from old age. She ended up being blind into both of her eyes. Her behavior kind of, she didn't have hearing in one of her ears. I mean, she was really geriatric, lived to 10 years, and she still laid an egg once every 2 weeks. So even at 10 years, she was laying those eggs. You know, but 4 to 5 years is generally the life of production there. We'll talk about what to look for pests and other concerns for chickens when we get to the very end. Is any questions about kind of the beginning of life to layer stage? Any questions about any in there?
We have nothing at this point. They might scroll in now that you've asked for it. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I guess my question, so real quick, when they're chicks and you have them in the brooder box, you say keep them close to have them imprint. Yeah. Like, are we talking in the house? Like, we have to keep them, there's going to be the heat lamp to keep them warm. So is somewhere at, like in the garage or an out room okay? Or, you know?
I guess it kind of depends on your situation. I always keep them in the living room, quite frankly. Okay. That's kind of just how I roll. My cats get involved. Everybody gets involved, so everybody knows who's who. And I keep them in the living room, kind of at waist height. So when we're sitting, we're at face height, you know. And I do use my old hamster cage for that purpose, because they can see everything that's going on around them. So they get super familiar. They're not fearful of the cats or the dog. You know, they're just like, these are my people, or these are my mammals, you know, that I'm dealing with, the fowl. But it really depends. Like my ducks, I would keep them in the bathroom, in the tub, because there's a water source.
Of course.
If you do get ducklings, you are going to need to have a water source for them, right? So putting them in the bathtub is your best bet, because there is a water source. You can have a little dish of water where they can get in there. And ducks are exceptionally messy when they're little. Well, I mean, they're messy when they're older too, but they're messy when they're little, but they need that water. And so you're going to be dealing with that quite a bit. I do like those farm. They're about 2 feet tall, and quite wide. You can get them at the feed stores. They're watering troughs or feed troughs. And for the ducks, that works beautifully. They don't fly out. So if it's 2 feet tall, not a big deal. They're hilarious. And even as baby ducks, they have lots of duck pinions, I like to say.
Nice.
Yeah.
I did get a question that came through. For layers, is it always advisable to raise from chicks versus buying mature chickens?
If you want them to care about you, I guess that's the biggest thing. If you want if you want your grown chickens to respond to you, and you know, care about your presence at all, without worms in your hand, right? Because it doesn't matter who they are. If you've got worms in your hand, you're golden. Then yeah, you want to get them as chicks. But if if it doesn't bother you, and if you can, you got worms in your hand, and that's the interaction, and that's the relationship. Get them as a pullet. I do have concerns about getting them from off property, because a lot of times they're not vaccinated. I did forget to speak about this. Chicks, you really do, if you are not getting them from a source that vaccinates, I absolutely recommend vaccinating them before they're 16 weeks. And I do need to add this to the presentation because a lot of areas have what's called Merrick's disease, and you don't know it's there. It's in the soil, it's in the ground, it's in the environment, and it can cause long-term damage when they do get it. So you won't see them have any symptoms or problems until they're older, but it can also cause premature death. And a way, if you do have a chicken that does die before, say, 5 years, you can go to WSU and they can do a necropsy, and they can figure out how or why your chicken passed. And it's super helpful, because if they do have Merrick's, and you find out, oh my gosh, my chicken had, it definitely, all the signs were Merrick's, it's on your property, you want to get them vaccinated. So even if you don't know, and you think, nah, I'm not going to worry about it, it is pretty devastating. The symptoms and problems they have if they do get Merrick's disease is super sad, and it's very painful for them. So and you don't really know until you've had a necropsy done. So vaccinated chicks are I highly recommend. If you are purchasing them from, say, a hatchery, you can pay, it's normally like 50 cents or $1, depending on the hatchery, could be as much as $2 or $3 to get them vaccinated before they are sent to you. And I do absolutely recommend doing that. Just as preventative, they do vaccinate for other, a couple other things as well that can affect young birds. So yeah, I really got to add that. I always forget to talk about Merrick's, but Merrick's is fairly common. We did have a breeder and a supplier in Snohomish, and as soon as they started supplying chicks to folks in King County who were vaccinated, the death rate went down. That provider had put out surveys, kept in contact with the folks that purchased from them, and as soon as they made that switch, it only took 3 years for that death rate of Merrick's, from Merrick's disease, the complications from Merrick's, to decrease. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. All right, let's do another poll question.
You got it. Let me get this set up. It is, here we go. And then we have some questions that I'll get to here in just a second. Okay, what extras can you feed chickens? That's our question, right? That's where we are. And it's mealworms, table scraps, meat, cracked corn, seeds, breads, others. Please answer in the chat. While you guys are looking at that question here, give you about 30 seconds. Interesting comment. My dad used to have a poultry farm in Malaysia, and pythons are common threats to chickens. But we do have hawks and other raptors here. How would you mitigate these predators issues if you want to go free range? Now, that's something I know you're going to address, I think, in a little bit about predators. So
yes, definitely will. Yep.
And then one more, for items you only need periodically, such as heat lamps, are there other options than buying, storing, etc.? It's an interesting one. So
buying and storing what?
Like the heat lamp. So stuff you only need when you're brooding, at the beginning. So.
Gotcha. I really wish we had a small chicken co-op because then we could, you know, clean, sanitize, and then share materials when, you know, folks in our community, you know, maybe someone had chicks last season and has the lamp and the baby feeders and things like that, and no longer is using them or needs them, and they've been cleaned and sanitized and they're in really good shape, and then they could share it with the next person. There isn't a real straightforward answer to that. I have a small tack room where I kind of keep all that stuff. When I lived in Proctor for 10 years, and what I did is I kept them in the root cellar. So, I mean, if you're going to continue the process of chickens, say you get into it and you're like, yeah, I love chickens and I'm going to do this for a really long time, I would just get a small Rubbermaid tub or a small box or something, and then just label it chick starter stuff, right? And then just store it, wash everything really well, and store it away for when you need it again. Or you know what? I have actually loaned stuff to friends who are like, I'm getting into chickens. And I'm like, hold it, wait, don't buy anything. We have the gear. Don't even do anything. I'm going to give this to you. You don't have to give it back. I got extras, you know?
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And also like buy nothing groups on Facebook, and, you know, maybe some free stuff on Craigslist. Do definitely look at those resources. I'm going to stop the polling now. Looks like we had most everybody answered, and here they come. Ooh, mealworms. Everyone thinks. I gave multiple choice, so people got to answer more than once. Others, let's see. Do we have any? Nothing in the chat. All right. There you go.
Can you keep this up? So I can speak to them. So mealworms, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I like to talk. I call mealworms and cracked corn, I call it the drug of choice for chickens.
The Reese's peanut butter cup is what I would call it.
It is like the best stuff. Cracked corn is fantastic. Cracked corn during the winter months, when it is very cold, I give my cracked corn to my chickens so that they have something processing in their body, keeps their body temp up real high. They already have a very high internal body temperature, but it gives them that extra energy that they'll need overnight for those cold evenings. Like say we dip below 32 degrees. Mealworms, 100%. There's like soldier flies. There's like a mealworm soldier fly mix you can do. Oh my gosh, like it is like amazing. They love it's extra protein, you know, and they love it. They love it. Table scraps. Now, it really depends on the chicken. So you have to think of chickens as individuals. Okay. So like I really don't like pepper. I like peppers, the fruit, but I don't like pepper on anything. I really do not like olives. Right. So me as an individual, I'm never going to eat those things. You know, I'm just not, it's not going to do it. Chickens are the same way. Okay. So you're going to have to really figure out what they will eat, and you're not going to want to leave it out there all day. Okay. So if you're going to give them table scrap greens, you're going to figure out what they will eat. Put that out there. The things they're not going to eat, put it in your compost bin. And then you're only going to want to leave it out there a couple hours. You're going to want to scrape it up, put it in your compost bin, because you don't want them picking up any bacterias, because then you've got wild birds, you know, our robins, our sparrows, different types of birds, crows. They will come in and they'll start eating, and then you are mixing the wild bird with your chickens, and it just happens, like little tiny bird, all that, you know. So you really want to get rid of those table scraps after about 2 or 3 hours, you know, and then only put out what they will actually eat. Meat, do not put out meat. It causes all kinds of other problems. So you will encourage all kinds of other things to come in that can burrow and pop up everywhere that you would like. Meat should either go in your compost bin or dispose of another way. Covered cracked corn, it is literally like crack for those chickens. They love it. Seeds, yeah, as long as they are hulled, like the shell is taken off, seeds, they'll totally eat it. If they're really large, you're gonna wanna you're gonna kind of break them up so they're digestible and they don't get stuck in their crop, because you can get a sour crop, anything that gets stuck in there and their crop can't process, it can get stuck in there, they can get sour crop, and that can cause a lot of issues. So you want to make sure they are crushed up. If you do cracked corn, also make sure it's processed well. Never do whole corn. Again, it'll get stuck in their crop and then you're going to have some major issues, and it smells and it's not fun. Bread, never bread, never ever bread, never ever bread. Same reason you wouldn't give bread to ducks or wild owl, fowl or anything. There's a lot of things in bread that you know, it's going to cause super issues for their digestive system. It's super not good for them. There's a lot of sugars in there. You know, depending on what kind of bread you're talking about, never bread, never ever bread. Cooked rice, fantastic. Cooked brown rice, totally awesome. Oatmeal, oats, like rolled oats or oats that have been processed, whole, like, it's just, they love that stuff. So this was awesome. Thank you for leaving that up. That was super helpful.
Of course. Now, when you say oats, do you mean cooked oats or dry oats are okay too?
Cooked oats, dried oats.
Okay.
If they're cooked, just like with table scraps, you're going to want to get rid of it after about 2 to 3 hours. Get rid of it. You don't want it sitting in there. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That was a good one. Yeah, that's something that, you know, they're not pigs. they're not.
Absolutely are not. They really are not. And you can't treat them as such. And pigs really are finicky as well. I've had pigs, and they will not eat everything either. It's kind of an old farm myth. Same with goats. Goats do not eat everything. It's an old myth. A lot of things are quite poisonous to them. So, and it goes for ducks too. So ducks, they're not going to eat table scraps. If you get ducks, don't do table scraps. They're absolutely not going to eat them. They're not. They're filter feeders. Okay, so they're just not going to do it. Yeah. Ooh, do I have to? Come on, computer. You can do it. Nope, I'm gonna have to do the thing. Sorry about that. I've got to use my mouse. There we go. Okay, supplements and extras. Now, if you don't plan on getting rid of your small chick feeders, this is a great way to use them. So oyster shell, give them that extra calcium. You're always going to want to have oyster shell available to them. You can get oyster shell pretty much anywhere. I believe you can even get it like at McLendon's. And you're going to want to get food grade. So oyster shell are all over. If you happen to go out to the coast, they would be happy to give you crushed oyster shell. Absolutely. You know, they would love to give it to you. So oyster shell, extra calcium, you're definitely going to want to leave that out and available for them all of the time. Chickens are pretty cool because they self-supplement. If they know their bodies really, really well. And so they will take in those extras as they need them. Okay, so that's why you kind of want to leave that accessible to them all the time. Here's where using your chick feeders comes in really handy. So you can put all of the oyster shell in the chick feeder and leave it out. It's a perfect way to reuse one of your containers that you only use really when you have chicks. Of course, maybe you have to buy another one later, say if you get more chicks, but if you're not, then that's a great way to reuse. Grit. So grit are tiny stones, right? Now they need grit, and they use grit to process. It's like in their crop, they use it to process and break down what they've eaten. Grit is really important. They are absolutely not going to get enough grit just hanging out in your yard. Absolutely not. So you're always going to want to leave a container or a dish of grit out, and you can get quite small bags, and we have all of these at GardenSphere, but you can go to a feed store also and get just a small bag of grit. If they are full-grown layers, you're going to want to get just regular grit, not the fine chick grit. They do have chick grit, and it is a lot smaller. Don't worry about getting that for your chicks, but you are going to start wanting to provide that to them when they become layers, because they're going to need to really work on that. Of course, we talked about scratch and corn, excellent supplement. It's kind of like a treat. I love to use it when I'm trying to do a head count. Now I have about 25 chickens, you know, and 4 roosters and it's a whole family, right? And so I use it to do a head count to make sure that I have everybody. So I put it in a container, a plastic container, actually, it works really great. And I give it a good shake, right? They eventually figure out that that's the sound that their treats make, right? That's the sign. And they all come running, and I can do my head count. Everybody's okay and safe. You can do that with 2 chickens, 4 chickens, you know, I mean, they figure it out, and they hear that sound and are like, yes, we're gonna get treats. It's a cool way to kind of bring them in if they're a little bit standoffish, right? And get them to interact with you. Mealworms, hands down, super awesome. Soldier flies, super awesome. Same thing, I have a metal container I keep my mealworms in. And so every time I'm messing with a metal container that makes that noise and I'm lifting the lid, they think, oh, mealworms. Again, a great way to do a head count, interact, and give them a little extra protein. If you're looking for a little more omega-3s in your eggs, flaxseed. It's super cheap. I know at GardenSphere we can order 50-pound bags of flaxseed. So if you want to use flaxseed, we can get it for you. It's just another cool treat for them, right? And same thing, they love it. If you can, you're going to want to provide a little bit of diatomaceous earth if you don't have a nice dry space. Diatomaceous earth is something that can keep mites and lice off of your chickens, so that's a really handy one too. We're going to kind of roll into our coop and run, just a quick rundown of that. This is where the coop, they're going to be at night. The run is they're spend most of their day on the run, okay? So your coop absolutely has to lock and has to have a functioning door, okay? 2 super important things. In the run, use straw, you could use wood chips. You could do, a lot of folks, they put a fine sand down. You do not want to use rocks. You want to use a sand, put a sand down, and then put the straw on top. Makes for easy cleaning, okay? And then the rocks don't get caught in their feet, causing damage, okay? So sand is good. Pine shavings for in the coop. Pine shavings. Cedar causes respiratory distress. So any cedar shavings are going to cause a lot of issues for your chickens down the run. They can get, once they, the oils cause respiratory issues. They can get bronchitis, so it can cause some damage there. So pine shavings all the way. You can get 3 cubic feet, you can get 10 cubic feet, you can get 12 cubic feet. They last forever. If you have four layers, they're hanging out in their coop, you're only going to have to clean that out maybe once a month. Swap it out, set aside those shavings, let them process and simmer. You don't want to directly put it on your garden stuff because it's got to mellow. But you know, wait 3-4 months, put it in your garden. You know, it's wonderful compost. And it goes right into your garden bed, nutrients for your wonderful vegetables and your plants. So it's a great way to use that. Straw breaks down differently. I do not recommend putting that into your garden space because if you get straw that still has a bunch of seed in there, you are going to have all of that growing in your garden really successfully. So straw should probably be put in a space. You can put it into, you know, set it aside. Maybe it's to suppress weeds in an area that you have a lot of weeds, right? And then just watch it to make sure that you are pulling out anything that the seed has survived, and you're getting new growth. So straw is a little bit different. I wouldn't use that in your garden. The coop is covered, totally beautiful, right? The run, however, you do need to have a covered space, right? An awning of some sort, to make sure that your food and water are covered. You don't want wild birds coming through and dropping their feces into your food and water. You know, rain will mess up that food real good. Then you'll have to clean out the whole thing. You know, you want to keep nice, fresh, clean water. So making sure it's in a covered space is really important. The space you need for your chickens. Now, this is this is the ideal space. I know everybody has different situations. So you're gonna want 8 to 10 square feet per bird. Think run, in their run, okay? Where they're spending most of their day scratching, hanging out. They stretch out and they sun themselves. They look really weird. They take in their dust baths. This is 10 to 8 to 10 square feet if that's where they're gonna spend the majority of their time. Inside of their coop, 2 to 4 feet per bird inside of the coop. Some chickens like to sit right next to each other. Some chickens like to have a little room, when they're in there roosting for the evening. So you want to really consider the size. Next question.
All right, let's take a look. Oops, here we go. This one's about what type of coop are you looking for? An A-frame, grounded, raised, movable, other. Quick question about that I have while everyone's answering. Please vote. Keeping the water clean and the food. Do you recommend there's the little nipples or there's the hanging water or what's the solution there? Is that
if you train your chickens early enough, the nipples are great because generally you can get a setup that's already made, has a lid on top, and they peck at the nipples to get the water they need. It's really, really efficient, keeps the water the cleanest. You do have to hang it though, and tend to be 2 to 3 feet tall depending on your variety. And if you're getting a banty, then it's a bantam chicken. You're thinking about 1.5 feet tall. So you'll have to hang it appropriately at the right height for them. Sometimes what I'm seeing is a lot of people have it too low. And so their chickens are way underneath trying to get their nipples. And you don't want chickens to do that. You want chickens to be standing fully, and you want them to be able to just raise their head a little bit and get that nipple. So you have to kind of pay attention to the height, which means you're also going to have to set up a hanging mechanism.
Okay.
Way efficient, way efficient. If you don't do that, you can always get waters that most waters are covered on top, but you have to watch for buildup because chickens will kick all kinds of fun stuff into the trough of the water, and that's what you need to watch for because a lot of times wild birds will come in, our native birds, and they're like, oh, cool, water, and then they have drinks and they're mixing it up, so you have to clean it off. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had chickens before, and we had the the waters on the ground, and they get so messy. And now, and one last question: you recommended what kind of material for inside the coop? It was started with a P. Pine. That was it. All right, I'm going to end the polling. Let's take a look at those results, and I'll leave that up for you.
Cool. Oh, no A-frames. Okay, that's cool. Grounded, mostly raised, movable. Awesome. Okay. The raised is really cool because then you really can secure that area. What was I going to say about water? Don't place your water on the ground. You want to have that elevated. So say you don't want your chicken say here's my ground and my water's on the ground. You don't want your chicken to have to go down, up, and drink water, because what they have to do to actually drink it is tilt their head all the way back. So they're losing a lot of water in that process. You want to have it raised up to chest height. So you can use bricks or, you want to have a nice base that the water actually sets on so that it's at chest height. So all they're having to do is scoop and go.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. We ended up putting on a pier block that you put underneath a deck, like that pyramidal almost. Yeah, that kind of worked out. But yeah, that was what we noticed is they do that thing where they lift their heads up. Yeah, so
they just lose a whole bunch, and having to do that multiple times to get the amount of water that they need. And you're going to want to keep your food off of the ground as well. Well, both, but for the same reason, is that they're going to eat the food, but if it's on the ground, their natural instinct is to totally scratch it out. They're just gonna kick that food out, and it's gonna be all over the place. I mean, it ends up getting all over anyway because they peck and they throw and they peck and they throw, but it ends up getting worse, and then you're finding dirt and wood chips and leaves and stuff in their food trough, and then you have to clean it out anyway. So both of them are raised up. The water, they're going to get the water they need efficiently. And then for the food, it's not like this giant mess. Sometimes they'll bury their food container. Even the largest ones, they will absolutely bury it because they're digging, all the dirt goes, or whatever it is, goes onto the feeder itself. So yeah, it's they're sneaky. They're sneaky little guys. So we're going to talk a little about the coops. Now, types of housing, right? We've got our A-frame. I actually have all of these varieties for different reasons. So I have, sorry about that. I have an A-frame for where I like to put all of my pullets because they're ready to be outside, but I have it in the middle of my big run. And so it lets the other chickens, they get to interact without having to start the pecking order, get familiar with each other. Really nice transition. I have a raised coop, and I love it. One of our roosters, he takes his ladies into there every night. They've chosen their spots, which is really hilarious. And I love it because they can go underneath as well, and they've got some protection. When I lived in Proctor, we would put the food and the water underneath because it was raised quite high. We had it 3 feet, raised up 3 feet, and so we were able to put the food and water under there. Super protected. When it rained, they all gathered under there to stay dry. And then we have ground shelter as well. We use that for new chickens who come in that maybe we've taken in from other folks that, maybe they have too many chickens or they're moving or something like that. And, I've helped my friends out who are getting rid of them, or we want a nice home for them, and that's where we'll house them until they've been quarantined. All excellent choices, all are fabulous. The A-frames, depending on how the A-frames are built, they can be quite heavy. So if you are considering, I know nobody was, but they're kind of cool because you can put handles on them and tractor them and move them around your yard. The raised, obviously they're going to be stationary, right? And the secure grounded are stationary, right? You can also do the chicken tractor. I don't have a good picture right now on this one for a chicken tractor, but those are going to be super, super light, and you move them around your yard. And they're kind of cool. If you don't want to mow your lawn, you'd have to move them every 4 to 6 days, but they will mow your lawn for you, and it is glorious. I loved doing that when I was living in Proctor. Some added protections to really think about when you're thinking about your coop. Okay, so that run and the fencing needs to be completely enclosed, right? You want them protected while you're gone. If you're home all of the time, you want to protect your greenery that you don't want destroyed from the chickens as well. I would suggest supervising your chickens if you let them run out in your yard or having the areas you don't want them to touch fenced. They will pull up everything. So having a super enclosed run is for them to be in general is going to protect them. It's going to protect them from all of the predators, right? I really want you to pay attention to the picture here because it is using hardware cloth. All right, I recommend an 1/8 to 1/4 inch. You can go up to a half inch size hole, but 1/4 inch is about as far as I feel comfortable with for me personally, size, because mice and whatnot, they have no problem getting through that 1/4 inch. It is sturdy, it is strong, it will keep out raccoons, it will keep out darn near all predators. Okay, using chicken wire it's very weak material, and all predators are able to get through that. And so I absolutely recommend hardware cloth, not chicken wire. Chicken wire is really for temporary fencing and temporary enclosures, okay? Or if you do use it, you're going to want to double or triple layer it so it overlaps quite a bit, okay? You're going to need netting on top if you have a lot of birds of prey, okay? You're going to need some netting on top. If you can dig out the perimeter, and you have that, say this is the ground. Here's the side of your the wall of your run. You're going to want to dig in that hardware cloth a good 6 to 12 inches out. 6 to 12 inches in. What that does is it prevents outside predators from digging. They hit it. You're going to want it to have about be a foot down, and have it go down and out, and it prevents them from digging under and getting into your coop. It also prevents the opposite direction. So if someone is coming up and they're in that, in that perimeter area, they hit that and they can't go any farther. I cannot recommend enough using spring hook and eye latches. Raccoons can lift and slide. They can unhook real easily if it's not the spring loaded. The beauty of the spring loaded is that you have this here, it springs back, but it also has it hooks here, and they can't pull that spring and lift at the same time, but they can move up and slide really easily because there's no tension there. So I absolutely recommend using the spring hook and eye latches. They will keep the raccoons out. Raccoons are crafty little devils, and once they figure out how to open a lock, they do not forget how to open it, and they successfully open it each time. So they can turn and then get the covers and latch it up. Raccoons, I'm telling you, they're super crafty. Next question.
Okay. While I get this one ready, because this is about, what do you think the most common predator? Cat, raccoon, squirrel, rat, bird of prey, dogs, other. So while you are answering, we had a question come through. Do you need to consider proximity to a septic tank when choosing a spot for your coop? We might address that in the next webinar more, but
yeah, and then I do address it in the next webinar, just peripherally, because septic tanks are kind of going out the way unless you are in a particular area like I am. I have a septic tank. Yes, you do want to keep them. There are different places have different recommendations and regulations on how far away you do need to keep them from your septic tank. Clearly, you don't want them on top of the septic tank lid, because that makes for really interesting removal of that septic sludge when you need to. But I would. You don't want them in your drain field, okay? So really keep a path, basically where you have your tank and your drain field. You wouldn't want to place them on top of that space, okay? And I would recommend at a minimum 15 feet away from your drain field and 15 feet away from your septic system, just to be safe, just to be on the safe side. But please check your the regs in your area as well.
Fair enough. And then, sorry, I had the poll not working, but now it's working. So please don't forget to vote. And then this is a good time to redress that question. We have hawks and other raptors. How would you mitigate these predators, this predator issue, if you want to go free range?
Ooh, excellent. Okay, so
I'm going to put up the answers here while you're looking at it. There you go. Share those results. There you go.
Cool. Oh yeah, leave this up. This is good. This is good. Okay, so I know this is going to sound strange, but dogs, your general run-of-the-mill dog is your biggest predator. Any dog that gets loose, a dog that is untrained, your own dog is actually your most common predator. The next common, raccoons. Raccoons are super crafty. They are the trash pandas of our time. They would be number 2. Cats generally stay away from chickens. Chickens, they are very smart. We had a cat once, and she was meaner than all get out, and she would attack everything. Well, she decided she was going to start hunting our flock. Now, this is very, very early on, when we first started having chickens. And she thought, I'm going to take this down. I'm going to take this chicken down. It was a buff Orpington, a quite large buff Orpington, right? And that buff Orpington, it was quite hilarious. All of the chickens went over to this corner, and they were like, they were talking to each other. They were clearly clearly having a meeting, right? And the cat got a little bit closer, and every single one of those chickens, they ran at her. And they stood their ground and they were like, you are not going to mess with our lady. You know, I mean, and the cat, from that day on, that cat never went near the chickens. And really, truly, none of our cats, even I have barn cats as well, they don't want to have anything to do with the chickens. And they really don't want to have anything to do with the ducks, because the ducks, they will charge the cats. So cats are like, don't even worry about cats. Now, when they're babies, when they're chicks, we do have a cat who says that she calls chicks, and I think this is what we believe, snack friends, because she will put her paws around the chicks and then breathe through her mouth, but does not eat them. So they're her snack friends. But once they get to a certain size, cats don't want to have anything to do with them. Nothing. Because they will come after the cats. Squirrels, not at all. Not even close to being a predator. Squirrels are there to get the food. You know, they go for our bird feed anywhere. So they are definitely a super scavenger, but they don't care. Sometimes we hear that opossums do not bother chickens. What they're looking for are the eggs and their feed. But they very rarely will you have an opossum that kills a full-grown chicken. Very, very, very rarely. A lot of times what you see is the opossum has figured out a way to get into the run and into the unlocked coop. Raccoons and opossums, they tend to hang out in kind of the same areas. Raccoons are very observant, and raccoons will be watching for these things to happen, especially if they're in your neighborhood or live in your tree, right? And they really will look for these things, and they will follow right in behind. Telltale sign, it's a raccoon. For those of you who are in an area with children, you might want to make them leave the room, that you will find that the chickens are decapitated. That is telltale sign of raccoon, okay? Birds of prey, in our area, we do have some beautiful birds of prey, lots of hawk, and you know, we've got our neighborhood eagles that even fly over in the north end. Eagles will leave them alone unless you're out in the county, you know, and you've got some beautiful eagle nests, you're up north or out by water. Eagles will leave them alone. Hawks, kind of depends. We've had hawks sit and watch them, but if you have other animals around, they're not going to want to deal with them. They'll go after the pigeon before they'll go after the chicken. If you are free ranging and you're in a very, very open area, I do suggest getting a barn cat if you can. Barn cats will deter a lot of birds of prey a lot of times. And if you have them free ranging, it really depends on the size of the area you're free ranging, because if it is, say you've got 10 acres and you're letting them free range, you're going to deal with it differently than if you have like a backyard and free ranging, right? So if you're in the backyard free ranging, say you're on a quarter acre or whatever, you could be moving them, say they're free ranging, and I say in quotes, but you have them kind of like in a mobile fence system, right? You could mobile fence system them. Most of the farms I've been on where they free range, we kept them in an electrified mobile system. So they might have been in a quarter acre free ranging, but it's a quarter acre free ranging, and they had the exterior protection of the mobile electrified system, which you can get at any feed store. On a very small scale too, you can get it to do a 10-foot section, an electrified mobile system. And then we would put up poles with reflective tape there. We didn't have a whole lot of problem with predators. You know, and then on another farm that I was on, they had a protector dog. You know, they had a dog that was trained. It was a Great Pyrenees, and it was a trained dog, and it was there to protect the flock. So it really depends on the site. If it's just in your backyard, They're just in your backyard. I wouldn't worry too much about it. You need to have them fenced though, in a fenced area in your backyard, and make sure there are no holes in your fences. It goes right to the ground, and it is at least 6 foot, because neighborhood dogs, stray dogs, we're seeing in the county and in the city, we're seeing a lot more dogs being dropped off. So we're seeing a lot more stray dogs nowadays. And so within the last year, the number has gone up quite a bit. And so though they don't know, they're scared, they're out roaming, and they will go for your flock. So yeah, you don't worry about squirrels. Really don't worry about opossums. It's very rare that they do it. But number 1 is dogs. Number 2 is raccoons.
And we did want to mention coyotes are abundant everywhere these days. So they can.
Night. Yeah, coyotes will mostly do their killing at dusk and at dawn. And so if you have a locked coop and you are putting your flock away every night, coyotes should not be a problem.
Good to know. And that is unfortunate about the stray dogs in the county.
It's in the city limit. Dogs are being dropped, and they're larger dogs too, which is interesting. The number of larger dogs being dropped off. People just can't care for them. Can't care for them
right now. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. All right. That's the last question we have. So you move on, do your thing.
All right. I got to use my mouse here. There we go. And here's our picture of predators. So we've got the cute little dog. So in the lovely, the very friendly looking dog, really any dog, don't assume that they're not going to go for your flock. Truly, okay? It could be the cutest, most just like lovey-dovey dog to everybody. It's that instinct, and that chicken runs, the dog's gonna run, chase it, and most likely cause damage. Most likely, okay? We always keep our fingers crossed that because they just tackled it and scared it. We always keep our fingers crossed, but dogs are your number 1 predator. I have a nice little rat there. Rats don't really care about your chickens. They care about the feed. So I do always like to recommend making sure that at least once a week, you're kind of tidying your feed area, getting it up, picking up all the stuff off the ground, throwing it away, or putting it in your compost. The feed can go into your compost, no big deal, especially if it's the certified organic feed. Just throw it into your compost bin. Because the rats, they're like, when they find out you've got feed and that you just don't care and you leave it out there, maybe you do care, but maybe your life is really, really busy, right? And the feed ends up being out there like, hey, cousin Bill Rat, I found a score. This is a great place. Like they figure it out, and then they're like, they tell their family. So and they come at night, and they'll eat all your scraps. It'll be nice and clean every morning for you. But when you're thinking about your feed, you're going to want to make sure you put it away in a secure area every night. Make sure you put that food away. Water, if you want to put it away in the cold months so it doesn't get iced up, water can stay out. Not a big deal, especially since you're going to be cleaning it out weekly. Food, you absolutely want to put it away at night. The raccoons love chicken feed too. So if they figure it out, you're gonna have a little family under there every night eating all the chicken feed. They're pretty funny. And I love this picture of the raccoon. He's like, what'd I do? I don't understand. What's going on? I'm just here, man. But yeah, so that's just a little reminder that the dogs are our biggest predator. Some potential issues for chicks, all the way to adults. Pasty butt for the first 2 weeks of life. Generally by 2 weeks, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about pasty butt anymore. It's when the feces gets kind of glued to their orifice. And you have to be really gentle with them, and lukewarm water. I just run them under the water, lukewarm water, and I just gently rub and try to break up the dried up feces. If you don't do that, they will die, because it's kind of like being backed up with their feces with nowhere to go. It's kind of like they just get filled with poop. So you got to watch that. And really, it's in that first week or two. If you know, it's kind of gross. But they're just, you know, just lukewarm water, gently rub that off and break that up, clean that area really good. You may only have to do it once or twice. And, you know, the poor little guys, they just, you know, they just aren't developed enough to keep that away. Plucking and pecking. So if they are deficient in a nutrient, chickens can start plucking themselves, their feathers, and eating their feathers or ripping them out if they're stressed. So if your chickens are super stressed out or they're deficient in a nutrient, they will start plucking feathers off themselves. If the flock is stressed, they'll start plucking, they'll pick the weakest link in that pecking order, and they'll start picking at that the weakest link there, the lowest on the pecking order, and plucking and taking out their feathers. It means they're stressed in some way. Okay, so check the nutrient levels, making sure their feed is a complex feed. Most of them are. Making sure you've got those supplements. Okay, you've got extra oyster shell, you've got the grit, you're giving them mealworms or soldier flies as extra protein. Okay, you're doing that. You're giving them all these extras. Maybe you have to make sure maybe you give them an extra salt supplement. There's a lot of different things you can do to stop that. I always isolate the one that's being pecked on, let them heal a bit. There is a peck no more. Say their feathers are being pulled out or they're being pecked on. You spread. It kind of smells like grape cough syrup, the peck no more, and it's purple, and you would spread it on that area, and it really does help. The smell and the visual of their skin being covered really helps to deter that problem. Egg eating, you gotta nip that in the bud, or that chicken's gonna eat its own eggs all the time. It's like biting nails, right? It's a really hard habit to break once you start doing it, and it is because of some kind of stress, something stressing them out, and then they lay it and they eat their own egg, or they watch another chicken. Maybe they're picking on another chicken and they'll eat that chicken's egg. Once they start doing that, it's really hard to break them of that. So make sure to watch. You can put in fake eggs. It does deter. If you've caught it early enough, the fake eggs will deter that. Broodiness. It's when they're wanting to lay on eggs and have babies. They want to have more babies. Buff Orpingtons and Australorps are notorious for going broody when they get a little bit older, like 3-4 years. They get very hot. They're laying, they're ready to incubate, okay? A lot of things you can do is you can put a cold ice pack underneath them. You can put them in a run that's a little bit elevated. So they're separated, it's elevated, it's getting that airflow under their belly, cooling them down, kind of bringing them down, getting those hormones in check so they can go back into the flock. Broodiness is really common, Buff Orpingtons and Australorps. Flying, I've got a few that they fly, but they also climb. Flying generally is not a big deal. Even if you do clip, they'll figure out a way to climb and climb up onto something and then launch themselves, which is like mini flying, into another area. So you want to make sure you keep objects that are more than 3 feet tall, really 2 feet tall if you've got crafty chickens, away from that fence line. Okay, keep it away from the fence line, and really don't leave it in there at all, because they will hop up and then they will launch themselves over the edge of that fence to go on an adventure.
That was a question we had real quick about how high does your fence need to be to deter them from flying? So if you're saying keep it away from the edge, any obstacle or object that's over 2 feet, but will they? I've seen we had leghorns that like to escape out of 5 feet high fencing. It was.
Yeah, because some chickens, I have some jungle. I call them, they are jungle fowl, and they they literally climb the fence and climb over. And then they find something on the outside to jump on and then launch themselves back in. They put themselves back. It's really funny. Not so funny because we call them eagle snacks. But they, I can't stop them. I just let them, that's natural consequences. They're going to go out, they're going to go on an adventure. There's some things they're going to come up against. A 6 foot is always good. Okay, and really truly to protect from anything coming in as well, you're really going to want to put something on top. I have done lots of different things. I have used the 1-inch hardware cloth all the way across. Keeps them from flying out, but it also protects animals from getting in as well. If you are in a neighborhood, that can be really helpful. Netting. I really, clipping their wings is really going by the wayside, because quite frankly, if they want to get over that fence, they're going to do it, and they will find any way to do it. Chickens are exceptionally smart and inquisitive, and they problem solve very well. So I wouldn't bother with clipping wings, because if it is done wrong, it can be super detrimental and harm the chickens in a way that affects them for the rest of their lives. So I really keep away from clipping and just watching. And some chicken breeds, like my Buff Orpingtons, never flew over. They're big chickens. Leghorns, they're really tall, but they're not very heavy. But Orpingtons and Australorps, man, they've got some weight to them. They can get quite big, and they're quite heavy, and they'll stay low. But you're right, those Leghorns, they like to get down real low, and then they launch themselves up. So it kind of depends on what your situation is, but I would, if you can net it above, do that, and there are lots of cool ways to do that. And I'll cover that a little bit in the next session with building a coop. So yeah.
Which is not too late to register for that. You can go over to cityoftacoma.org/workshops, and you can register for that it's coming up we're doing 1:30, I think is what we're doing.
1:30.
All right. So I do have a couple more questions. That's good. This will answer that.
We start that at 1.
Oh, started at 1. I'm sorry.
I'm starting at 1. If you guys aren't there, I don't know if I can leave.
Sharing my screen here.
Okay, excellent. So we have last 3 questions here that we'll take. And the first one is concerns about respiratory diseases such as bird flu. Is it contagious in humans or vice versa? And also we'll add that the salmonellosis that our local birds are going through right now, maybe that's something you can address?
Yeah. So Merrick's is probably the biggest concern in our area, Merrick's disease. It is, if you're out in the county, it's in your soil. It just is. And it's just there. It's like a part of our system, our ecosystem. And so it's just kind of be there. Yeah, you can hear my roosters, and my ducks are having a heyday right behind me. The salmonella is a concern, with our climate changing, different bacterias and stuff. They're going to present themselves, and so we kind of just got to take it as they come. If you would like to get your birds tested, you would take a fecal sample or take a group fecal sample. Okay, so you would clean out your coop. You would let them defecate for a day or so overnight. Take that feces out of there because it's fresh, right? It's fresher. And the WSU extension in Puyallup does a great job. They'll send that off for testing. You can find out if your flock has salmonella. It's not very common here right now. Avian flu is also, fingers crossed, it's not a big deal around here. Our climate just isn't right we still get real cold. We get cold enough where a lot of those things don't affect us yet. But again, the WSU Avian Extension, their avian lab is fantastic. If you need to get tested, you get your flock tested, they're a really great resource. Respiratory disease is our most common because we're very wet, right? So in the winter months, and really our climate is changing quite a bit. So really fall into late spring, when we get this weird intermittent rain coming and everything else, and our Decembers are tending to be quite wet. Keeping the area as dry as you possibly can. Okay, that's going to help keeping the areas dry. You're going to have to clean out your coop more often, because you don't want the feces sitting in there, which also has moisture, creating a real humid area for the chickens while they're sleeping. Some signs of respiratory distress, They have snotty noses, just like us. They have runny noses. Wheezing. Their breathing will change, and you'll see that they'll be wheezing or breathing differently. If they're lethargic, okay. Chickens get pneumonia. And you won't, and sometimes you just won't know until it's too late. We have our chicken Nugget. I know. I'm gonna explain that. Her name was Golden Nugget. She was a Buff Orpington, and she was a beautiful golden color. And my preschoolers, they thought they looked like gold. Okay, so I raised her with. I was teaching preschool at the time, and I raised her with the preschoolers. And so Nugget, we had no idea. We had no idea she had pneumonia. For 3 or 4 nights, she was coming to our back door, knocking on the back door, and I think she was telling us she was in distress. And we found her, this is like 5 days of her knocking on the door. She was also a house chicken, so she liked to come in. And so she would knock on the door, she'd come in and get treats. We found her in the run, distress breathing, and she didn't last more than 5 hours. So it was that fast. So in hindsight, we should have taken that, her telling us, hey, I don't feel good, and this was years ago. So now we know. So if a chicken is behaving in a different way, really take that to heart. They're trying to tell you something. They'll let you know if they're sick. But respiratory diseases are, pneumonia, bronchitis. Yeah, that's your biggest concern, and especially with October through April to really watch for that. Yeah.
Good to know. We have, is an automated feeder a reasonable option if you have to be away for 2 days or for a day or two occasionally?
Don't even bother with it. Don't even bother. Get the big feeder, okay? And get the giant metal, the big one, big guns, right? That thing's gonna last you 2 or 3 days. You fill it to the brim, you make sure it has a cover on top. That's gonna last you 2 or 3 days. It will last you 4 days to 5 days if you only have 2 chickens. 4 chickens, it'll last you 2 or 3 days. Any more than that, you're gonna have to replenish it probably every day. But I wouldn't bother with those automatic feeders. They're just gonna cost you money out of your pocket, and they break down the line. So
there you go. Right. And then also clean water before you leave. That's always good. What are the best breeds for chickens for beginners? That's a big, and we have that graphic if you want me to put it up.
Yes.
Here it comes. Let's see, where did it go now?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
At some point, Jenny, whether it's before or after, I don't think you covered eggs on, and usually you do that on how to store them and not to wash them and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Good reminder, Janda. Thank you so much. So we're looking at this list here. If we could scroll to the chickies. There we go.
That one? Okay.
This is really good. This is one of the reasons I love GardenSphere is that we try to keep it easy with color coding. So you can see that the kind of aquamarine is the standard chicks, real easy ones. You got the rare chicks, the ultra rare chicks. If you are just starting out and you're looking for a chicken that's going to be a little bit more friendly, right? It's a friendly chicken, the Buff Orpington. I love Buff Orpingtons. They are the golden retriever of chickens. Not only do they lay very reliably, they're very friendly. You can train them to do weird tricks. I mean, Buff Orpingtons are amazing. Australorps, those black Australorps, same thing. They egg produce like you wouldn't believe, long lifespans, very easy to care for. Again, those 2 types aren't going to want to fly over a fence. They're not interested. Okay, they're not interested in flying, but they do go broody when they get a little bit older, or they can. Not all of my Buff Orpingtons and not all of my black Australorps. There's always like 1 or 2 out of the bunch that would be like, I'm having babies, and they really are into having babies. But don't worry about that. They are the most friendly. Golden buffs are very sensitive feeling. They like a lot of pets. If say you have a chicken that passes, I like to say that those are the chickens that like to stand by the edge of the chicken grave and say the last rites. They're very sensitive, the golden buffs, and they're super good layers. They're also very friendly. I love them. Those are my top 3. Rhode Island Reds are super easy to take care of. They're very independent. If you're looking for an independent chicken who's like, I got this, I'm laying eggs, you don't gotta worry about me, I'm a chicken, you know, I'm hanging out. Rhode Island Reds are your chicken. They're very independent, very self-starters, self-take-carers. They're wonderful. They're cool. We have one called Mary right now, and she's quite old, but she lays reliably. She does what she does, and she just, you know, she does her thing. She has her friends that she hangs out with, you know, and that's it. Doesn't like to come to us unless we have treats, but you know, that's okay. And then my A team, Buff Orpingtons, Black Australorps, Golden Buffs. That's the A team if you're starting out. B team, the Rhode Island Red, the Barred Rock, and I think we have do we have Copper Morans on here? The Morans are fantastic. The Morans, I really like the Morans. They're we've got the blue copper on here, but if you find any Moran, any type of Moran, they're sweet as can be, sweet as can be. Easter eggers are kind of a standard chicken. Easter eggers are super independent. They lay beautiful eggs. Their eggs are so pretty. They do have lots of energy, and they have lots of opinions, and they tend to think that they're the prettiest chicken. And they will decide on their time if they're gonna lay. And that's all of my Easter eggers are just like that. They're like, I'm too pretty, and I will lay when I say I'm gonna lay. So they have a bit of an attitude. So that would be like maybe my C team or D team. The rest of those chickens, if you've never had chickens before, don't get specialty chickens. Okay, they're all gonna have their own little quirks. They're gonna be a little bit more difficult to handle. The Brahmas tend to be, out of all of them, I would say probably the Brahmas. That buff Brahmas are real sweet. They're pretty good layers. They're super calm, super calm. Those buff Brahmas, out of all of the specialty chickens on here, the buff Brahmas are probably your, you know, I put them maybe on the B team, maybe top of my C team list. Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you want to see the other page, or is that one okay?
Oh no, that's totally cool. Yeah.
Okay.
There's still. Oh, okay, never mind. There's still chickens down on the bottom of that page, but we can email that list, or you can find it on the GardenSphere website at gardensphere.biz, B-I-Z.
I know that Wilco has Neuvogens. Now, if you get chickens from Wilco or Tractor Supply, they are not vaccinated. You're going to want to vaccinate them from Merrick's disease. You are absolutely going to want to just avoid any of those complications. You're going to have to vaccinate. But Wilco does have Neuvogens. Now, Neuvogens are very much like a Rhode Island Red, except they're like highly intelligent. So if you're looking for like a trick chicken, the Neuvogen is the best trick chicken in the bunch. So yeah, and then I know Jen had mentioned eggs. So if you are going to be getting these wonderful eggs, right? Fresh eggs don't have to be washed right away. Okay, fresh eggs can stay out on your counter, not in the refrigerator, out on your counter for up to 21 days, 3 weeks. And they stay fresh, yeah, 3 weeks, totally good. If you do wash them, they're good in the refrigerator for a couple months. Okay, because they're fresh, they're laid on your property, they're ready to go. The stuff in the stores generally are a little bit older, but then again, they're washed, right? And the reason you don't wash them, your fresh eggs, you keep them on the counter, is that the chickens have just put this wonderful coating all around, protective coating around that egg, the chicken eggs, right? A really nice protective coating, and it's keeping bacteria out. It's keeping all the yuck out, right? It's protecting what could have developed into a little being, right? A little chick, like a chickle-doodle. So yeah, you can just leave it out, not a problem. 21 days on the counter, totally good. Before you use them, obviously, you want to wash them before you use them, and you are going to notice if you have kids or you're looking for some kind comparison, get a 6-pack from the store, use your eggs, crack them together. You're going to notice that your eggs are really orange. They're going to be just rich color. And then from then on, you're going to be like, I'm never buying eggs again. That was good. Thank you for reminding me, Jenda. Now with duck eggs though, duck eggs, they have to be refrigerated. They're not like chicken eggs. Duck eggs don't have that protective coating. So when they do lay, duck eggs are delicious. They're huge. They're great for custards. The duck eggs, you collect them that day, you scrub them and wash them, pop them in the refrigerator. They're good up to about 2 weeks in their fridge. After that, they start to turn and they get a little weird. They get that gamey flavor. So.
Excellent. Good knowledge. I would like to say that one of my favorite books is Unusual Chickens for the Exceptional Poultry Farmer. If you haven't heard of that book, it's fantastic. It's a good one, but it deals with all these different breeds in a fun way. So I believe I sent a link on the chat to GardenSphere.biz for that page. There was some missing part because I zoomed in so we could see that a little better. But please feel free to go to their website and give them a call. As I said, we're coming back at 1 o'clock for the one about chicken coops specifically. So register now and show up then. And I want to thank you again, Jenny. We'll see you back in about an hour. Right? Go ahead. Yeah.
The resource, can we show the resource list really quickly?
Yeah, that resource list.
I can try to email that also.
Is it this one, the one we were just looking at?
I just emailed this morning.
Oh, that one. Sorry, wrong one. Let me get that up.
C3 is behind.
I have to find it. Let's see.
While you're looking at that,
Here
something
it is.
ducks.
Go ahead.
Ducks need a different feed than chickens. They actually need duck feed, not chicken feed, because of the nutrients that they need. So if you do have ducks, GardenSphere does order duck feed from Modesto. It's certified organic. So, excuse me, you do need the duck feed for ducks, just to put that out there. Oh yeah.
Good to know there. Yeah, here's this. You can see the different email addresses, the websites. You can, and this will be emailed to our participants.
Fantastic.
And excellent. All right, let me stop that. Okay. Well, why don't we wrap this up and we'll all get some lunch and then come back in a little bit. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Janda, do you want to wrap anything else?
Just maybe get back with us at 1 to learn about coops, check out what's coming up. And then also on the website, you can find recorded webinars that we've done earlier this year and last year. Jenny already started us off with 2 this year. Is it 3? 2, I think. Anyway, so there's lots on there that's recorded. And then we also have how-to videos. Some of both of those you can get the links on my website, on the EnviroHouse website that Gator put in the links. And you can also find them on the city's YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/City of Tacoma/playlists.
Fantastic.
So we'll pass that out and we'll see some of you back at 1.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jenny. We'll see you soon, and we'll see everybody else hopefully at the next one, or don't forget to check the website. I will end this session just so that we can kick everybody out. So,
Okay.
And we'll talk after the second meeting. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.